very much for those. I guess next on the agenda is review and approval of the minutes. First one being March 28th, 2013.
With trends analyses on police-involved shooting investigations, citizen complaints, and the like. There were two, I believe, that were requested to be done by the IA, and those are the ones that there was a complaint back from APD saying we will not be furnishing staff to investigate. The other three were still served to the IRO's office, and I think Commissioner Shine and the rest of this committee did expect some work towards it or a report on it.
Well, I would submit that there, if that's what we're speaking about, it's the 5. 3 of them were submitted to IA and rejected, and 2 of them were assigned to the IRO. And we're certainly working on one, and will be part of the annual report, which is all police officer-involved shootings in the last 5 years. We have data for 3 years, and we're going to include data for 3 years. Types of brief description of all citizen complaints for the last 5 years is certainly a huge project, of which we have some data for the last 3 years, but it's certainly not collated into a form that it would be reportable in any time soon.
Well, I guess with the review of the status of this, I'm not thinking about, I wasn't expecting it to be in report format at this point, just kind of an update of where we're at. So
that's where we're at. The shootings for the last 3 years will be in the annual report for 2012, and the other one is an ongoing project.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Next would be status and negotiation of IRO, POC, and APD Memorandum of Understanding.
With respect to the APD Memorandum of Understanding, we have a meeting set up with Deputy Chief Page for the individuals from the Commission, that would be Commissioner Cameron and Commissioner Varela and myself in early June, prior to the next POC meeting to begin those discussions.
So it would be prior to the next POC, okay. Okay. And in keeping with the IRO show here, the status and negotiation of IRO, POC, and District Attorney Memorandum of Understanding.
We have a meeting set up with the District Attorney and her staff, with Commissioner Shine and myself, which are the designated persons from that motion, prior to the next POC meeting,
Right.
Early June.
Okay. Get you off the hot seat for a second. I think the next item is discussion regarding mediation and CPC. And I believe that is Commissioner Segal's to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had not anticipated such a large audience. I made about a dozen copies of a 2-page handout to share both with you, commissioners, with staff, and with other interested parties in the room. If you'd like, here's one for each of you. And here are the remainder for staff tables and for the public, if I might. And thanks so much. I'd like to just touch on a handful of the high points is what I've passed around. Okay. Mediation is written into our ordinance as a suggested possible avenue of resolution of conflicts between citizens and APD. The current structure, as best I'm able to understand it, is that a single mediator from APD would be assigned and that the mediation would occur, as last I understood it, somewhere at APD headquarters. I may have any of that wrong, and that it hasn't occurred in a number of years. As I am a trained mediator, this was of some interest to me. I do mediation on an ongoing basis, and I took the time to attend a part of the conference at NACO last year having to do with mediation. It's being done nationwide, and I called up the Washington, D.C. office that's the parallel of our Police Oversight Commission, which has one of the best mediation programs in the nation, in my opinion, and spoke with them earlier this week for, I thought I would talk to him for 10 minutes, and the man wouldn't get off the phone. It was about a 45-minute conversation, and he was excited that we cared. What is mediation? It would be confidential. It would be face-to-face between the complainant and the officer with the mediator, and I would suggest there be 2 mediators in the room at all times at a neutral site, and it allows for active participation. It can offer, in my opinion, great conclusion to a problem in a case in many instances. I mediate for Metro Court, and most of the mediations do conclude with a handshake and an agreement of what occurred. What it might offer to an officer is a chance not to have a black mark on his or her record, but instead just a notation in the file that they've been to a mediation, end of story. So there's a great opportunity to stand down a problem where a citizen gets some resolution, and the officer in a quiet room with only a mediator present is able to say what he or she did well or wrong or have it out. There is no requirement that any outcome occur. There's no requirement that they resolve the case, but there's a heck of an opportunity. It's hoped, in my mind at least, that after a citizen filed a complaint, the office would take a very short time, a few days or a week or so, to determine if the complaint is related to our jurisdiction, so that it's not about Bernalillo County Sheriff, it's not about some other thing, and it's not off topic. Once there is appropriate jurisdiction and possibly a civ, so that, for example, I don't think that use of force cases should be mediated. I think those probably need to stay in a different format. But many, many cases would be viable. Somebody once suggested to me you couldn't possibly mediate an allegation of racial bias. I'm not sure that's true. I think some cases of civil rights might not be appropriate for mediation, but many, many would. One of the cases we heard several months ago had to do with just that topic, and I think it would have been easily resolved in a room. Oh, I see what you were thinking, officer. Oh, I see how you could have thought that, citizen. We're done. It seems to me that it's possible that in the matter of 1 to 2 hours of mediation, once in a while there would be a second session, or even a third, that a case can be resolved. The track rates out in DC, for example, are that about 75% of cases that go to mediation are successfully solved. That means there's an agreement, a handshake. Both parties say, that's true, that's a good way to end this case, and it leaves the room like that with a small notation that goes into the file. There are a variety of ways that that can be fleshed out, and I don't mean to take your time now to flesh every piece of it out, but instead would offer the written analysis that I've given here as the beginning structure of what a mediation process could look like. It startles officers to hear it at the first, but I think that the best way to do this, there are a variety of models around the country, would be to require the mediation. That means you'll come to the table and give it a shot. Several officers I've talked to while I was doing ride-alongs felt this was a great idea. Several other officers gulped hard and said, I don't want to go in a room with any of those citizens. And I guess I can understand both points of view. But if they were to go, there's a strong chance that they could even say to the citizen, you know, you were really out of line, and I was scared for myself, and the officer has a chance to speak too, they're a person in that room. At the same time, well, let me put it this way. If an officer refused to go, the officer would be at risk of being found guilty of the violation alleged by the citizen. There's an enticement, more than an enticement, to the officer to show up. But if he shows up, or she shows up, in good faith, and does anything to begin the process, that's all that's really required, is to listen and to talk and give their side. There is no requirement to resolve, but boy, it happens a lot. Likewise, if the citizen makes the allegation, doesn't show up, complaint dismissed, officer done. So it's fair to both sides, in my opinion. It's a very interesting, different resolution method than simply having our investigators go out and try to determine the facts dryly on their own from each of the parties and hand back a third-party resolution. That's my spiel for now. I'm happy to take any questions from the commissioners here, and frankly, Mr. Chairman, from the audience, if you wanted to open the floor.
Let's keep it up here for a minute. I guess my first question is, you had mentioned the mediator would be an employee of APD?
Mr. Chairman, presently the structure is that the mediator is an APD mediator. I would suggest a change in structure so that the mediators are neutral third parties and are not related to any APD or other law enforcement group, nor are they related to probably steeply any part of the city, nor to, frankly, any of the other organizations that may be out there that are challenging police. They should really be neutral, and I suggest there be two of them.
Would the mediator decide whether or not the final disposition, was it sustained, not sustained, exonerated? How does that play into it?
They would most likely come out of the room saying a fruitful discussion was had. The recommendation is that the complaint be dismissed at this time. Occasionally, they might come out and say the allegations were discussed and we agree that the following SOP violation may have occurred, and we leave it to the chief of police or other group, whoever in our current structure, that's who it would be, to develop sanctions as they see fit, whoever's in charge of the sanctioning. But that would be those two parties coming to that conclusion.
Okay. Commissioner Barker.
Couple of things. I've seen mediation work very well and seen it not work very well. It takes the participants walking into the room with a determination to walk out, with an amenable decision. Would you say again the consequences for a police officer that did not show up?
And by that I mean unexcused. I mean, if he's or she detained on a call, gets the flu, etc., that's an excused absence and they just reschedule. But if they simply say, I'm not coming to that thing, you can go sit in that room alone, then in my first pass here, they would be found guilty of any charges against them on that basis, because they won't even come talk about it. So there's an enticement for them to come. Once they come, they don't have to agree that those things occurred those ways. They can sit in that room and work it out as far as they can, and they can say, we couldn't come to a resolution, and that's a perfectly acceptable way of leaving a mediation.
I think that that's true, and of course you did not address what happens if the citizen doesn't show up.
I did, and the complaint would immediately be dismissed.
Okay, and of course you refer to no punishment as an incentive. You know, the rewards and punishments, the reward is no punishment. That's
Punishment is punishment?
Yeah, so I think that's something that's minutiae that can be worked out. I believe
The intent is that there's everything to gain and nothing to lose by trying this.
That's true.
And that's the way I'd like to see us wrap our heads around it and think about moving forward and shaping it.
And I think that the contractor system would be the most effective because, if you're getting a paycheck from somebody, you're going to kind of lean that way.
Okay.
So I having been in mediation before, I too think that it's a useful tool. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do much more than take it under consideration today. Obviously, there are quite a few issues that would have to be worked out as far as budgeting and who answers to who and what happens first and whatnot. I guess this jumps out at me more as an opportunity to share this as a recommendation to any future task forces or anything of that nature that are put together to try and improve the system. I don't know where or when that venue will open itself up, but every indication that that's going to happen in the future.
I think that's true, Mr. Chairman. I think I added it to our to-do list, the first reconstructed session of this LTPC. I'm eager to see it move forward, and I hope that our side of the POC continues to meet as one of those kinds of good work that I can only see benefits growing from it if we can shape it right. It's an opportunity. That's how I see it.
Is this something that you want to have heard at the next full commission?
No, I think that I would ask your consideration and thought. I have distributed a couple of copies to the public, and it's fine if they run around and are copied and shared as need be, corrected as need be. It's understood, I hope, that it's a draft. It's one individual, one commissioner making an effort to start. Corrections are gratefully accepted from any and all quarters, and let's see where we can go. And in a couple of months, perhaps, when time avails, we can take it up again. If we then want to endorse it, we can put it on a path toward a full POC, if the POC exists.
Commissioner Barker.
And, you know, in reading the results of past citizens' complaints, I believe the IRO does, just to a great extent, do some, you know, mediation, because a lot of these problems are resolved. And I think what we're looking at here is maybe some not easily resolved problems, and bringing in an independent kind of a mediator as opposed to the IRO person or the APD person. So I don't see this as being a standard operating procedure for every citizen's complaint. I see it, you know, we're going to have to figure out how to sort those out, and that too will go into fine print.
Thank you. I tend to agree with what you're saying. If they're very easily resolved on a quick call to a complainant who says, gee, you know, all I really want is their supervisor told, that's the kind of shuttle diplomacy that the IRO office has currently been practicing, and it would be fine with me for that to continue and save everybody a little time and grief to come down to a full-blown mediation. Thank you.
Okay. With that said, the next item is other business, and those of us that went to the open meetings training this week were warned about other business. So, with that said, is there any other business?
You're in the crosshair.
Yeah.
There is no other business.
Actually, it was a very good training on the Open Meetings Act, and all three of us attended. And I think one other commissioner was there as well as the IRO Hammer and at least one investigator. I don't know if those are open to the public, but it might be interesting for the public to see them. It was conducted by City Clerk Amy Bailey in the council chambers. And when is the next one scheduled?
It's scheduled June 20th or 21st. I do have to check for the date on that, and they are open to the public and anybody else that wishes to attend.
Good, and there were plenty of seats available.
Okay, well, I'm not used to getting through an agenda in 40 minutes, so I wrote a little song that I'd like to sing for everybody. I didn't. I don't know, IRO, is there anything you'd like to add? APD? I bet you got something, I'll get back to you. Hold on.
I just wanted to mention, the public didn't know about Amy Bailey's briefing on the thing. It was never posted, it was never advertised. The only thing we saw was something sponsored by FOG that cost like $200 a day. And we were never informed about that, and of course, you know, I've had issues with Ms. Bailey on the IPRA as well as Ms. Hammer, but no, we were not, the public was never notified. I never saw any announcement on their meeting.
Can I have the IRO's office check with Ms. Bailey and make sure that that's being advertised?
Well, I'm sure she gave public notice of a meeting, and it was be given pursuant to the ordinance, which requires posting. If it is in fact a public meeting, because it's not a commission, it's an internal training and not, if I defer to Ms. Garcia, if she believes that it's a public meeting, that's fine. I have no knowledge of that, and I'm sure that Ms. Bailey complied with whatever requirements there were.
Okay.
I believe it was posted, and I believe I did see it posted on the city clerk's website.
We'll double check that. Mr. Du Bois, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Should determine when your next meeting's going to be, and then you can adjourn, if you so wish.
Okay, it looks like that's already been decided, and that is to be Wednesday, June 27th
I'm
at
sorry,
2 p.m.
Thursday.
I was gonna say, I don't know why we moved.
That's Thursday.
Okay.
What is the right date?
Thursday, June 27th.
Thursday, June 27th. Okay. So that's the next meeting, and the next item is adjournment. So I guess at 2:43, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you to everybody.
Well, I'll see you later. I'm gonna be on next week.
Okay.
I'm gonna put that my goal is to have.